All right, let's find out what happens. I'm going to pass it on over to Cedric and Corey here for round number 10.
Thank you so much, Maria, and everybody else at the news desk. Cedric Phillips, Corey Baumeister, getting ready to bring you our round of Limited for the day, and it is a doozy in front of us, Corey. We've got an undefeated player, and then the dad of the Pro Tour.
The dad, yeah, absolutely.
That's right, Eli Kassis. A fan favorite, to be sure. He's been doing this thing for a very long time, and he's been doing it very, very well, has Eli. Maybe the star of the show this round, but we can't ignore what Jacob has put together so far this weekend.
Yeah, I mean, a 9-0 run here for the Pro Tour. You got to be feeling as good as humanly possible. Have a great chance to make it to the top 8, but you got to get through one of the best players of all time. I've seen Eli play for years here, and truly astonishes me how great of a player he is.
And it does look to be a fairly difficult matchup here for Jacob, too, for the reasons that Frank did explain. There's some key cards here that Eli does have access to. We will see if they work themselves into the equation. And you know, Eli already does have one of the best cards in the set in his hand there in Wrath of the Skies.
Yeah, absolutely phenomenal card, and I'm always afraid to play against Eli Kassis when he has a deck that has a lot of agency, and that is exactly what this Esper strategy has. A lot of play to it, a lot of different things he can do, and a lot of power. A lot of power with rares and mythics here.
So we are going to settle in here for what may be a little bit of a longer matchup. It is a Fanatic of Ronus here to get the party started for Jacob.
Yeah, a great card, being able to do a little bit of ramping early and then being able to just really have a true threat here in the late game. Being able to eternalize it is really all you can hope for a powerful 2-drop in this set.
Alrighty, Kassis missing blue mana at this stage of things. Does have a pretty good hand there with the Serum Visionary and the Electrozoa, but not going to be able to cast those just yet. So the Fanatic's going to come in there for Jacob and passing the turn back, it looks like, over to Kassis perhaps here, and a Plains is the draw step. So Corey, maybe a little bit of issues here for Eli.
A little bit, and a little bit of small issues here for Jacob as well. Being able to have black mana there on time to get Korma in play before Eli really, gets his feet set would have been absolutely devastating here. Really would have forced that Wrath of the Sky a little bit earlier than Eli would have wanted, but Jacob having a little bit of mana problems as well until he picks up this landscape.
Well, it'll be that landscape. Very bountiful one there for Jacob as a Warped Tusker among the cards that are options here. And there you do see that bountiful landscape and a passing of the turn. So Jacob not off to the most explosive of starts, but Jacob has something that Eli does not, which is the ability to play spells.
Yeah, Bountiful is still only being able to get the Teamer land, so a bunch of Galvanic Discharges online to be able to interact with Eli a bit, but, unlike the last match that we just saw against Brian, Eli's not trying to be too aggressive, so Galvanic Discharge does go down a little bit in value. Still one of the best removals you can have in the set, though.
Yeah, not a card you're going to pass very often.
Oh, no.
Discharge. Very, very powerful card here in Modern Horizons 3. So Eli with just another Plains and passing the turn back. A Breaker of Creation is the draw here for Nagro. We saw how powerful that was for Jacob in the last match. We'll see if it's actually powerful in this match, but these players are stumbling and fumbling their way through the opening turns of this game.
And they're both smiling a bit, be like, well, this is probably not our, most efficient draws from either side, but Eli picks up the Polluted Delta to get an island here, and now we are online from Kassis.
So we'll see how Eli wants to navigate now that he actually has the ability to do some things. And it'll be a Serum Visionary, the 3-mana 2/2 that enters the battlefield. It'll draw a card, so that's step 1 there for Kassis. Step 2 is Scry 2, and we'll see where these cards are headed for the former World Championship runner-up.
Yeah, he got so close a couple years ago and wants to definitely do it again here just a couple years after his finalist appearance. I also love the Serum Visionary. Just Elvish Visionary, Serum Visions, just combine them.
That's right.
Love the nostalgia of these cards.
Very, very good card is the Serum Visionary. Haven't seen it much in Limited here this weekend, maybe more so by happenstance than anything else, but it is on the battlefield here this turn. And one of the cards that Frank did mention in his short breakdown of the news desk is now in Eli's hand. He has a copy of Consigned Memory. Really good card against the Eldrazi strategies in Limited, Corey.
Definitely, yeah. Really, really powerful. There's more applications than just playing against Eldrazi, kind of hints why Eli is playing it in the main deck. Usually those kind of cards are, just for sideboarded matches, but really, really powerful one to be able to put in your main.
There it is. Well, Jacob now has access to black mana alongside the red and green, so a classic Jund versus Esper battle is underway. It took a little while to actually get here, but we are here now, and now there is Corum the Undertaker.
Yeah, one of the commander-focused cards here in MH3 Limited that is actually really, really, really strong. So Eli's going to have an answer for that one, but you know, now that we have 6 mana available, Eli's got a plethora of options for the powerful card.
Yeah, Eli does have a lot of options at his disposal right now. We've already mentioned the Wrath of the Skies, which, again, we're talking about an open deck list event here, so this is a card that Jacob is aware that Eli has access to. It's more so, can I even afford to play around such a thing?
Yeah.
Which I don't think this game is really lending itself to have that be the case just yet. So Jacob is just going to operate somewhat normally, for lack of a better term.
Yeah, he's happy he can just cast some spells after the first couple turns of doing the old draw-go strategy. Not as good in Limited as it is in maybe a control mirror.
This is true. An end-step Electrozoa here from Kassis. The 3-mana 3/1 flash flyer is onto the battlefield. It, of course, will generate 2 energy when it enters the battlefield. And now at the beginning of your pre-combat main phase, you can tap Electrozoa unless you pay an energy. And it looks like Eli, I believe, has some interest in paying the energy to keep it untapped, and he will. So the Flying Jellyfish is in there.
Yeah, maybe not the best card that we've seen in these blue decks. If you can get it in a Jeskai Energy Shell, it's of course a lot better, but Eli does have a very, very powerful card, Shadow of the Second Sun. So kind of trying to do his best Wilderness Reclamation impression, where he can untap and then play these Electrozoas during Jacob's turn while still tapping out during his own turn. Really powerful combination.
It is indeed. So we'll be heading back Nagro's way here in just a moment. See if Jacob can put anything together here. Stumbling and fumbling, as I did mention a little bit, in Nagro.
It looks like Jacob does have the ability to cast the Breaker of Creation this turn. So that would be great. The one thing Jacob wants to do here in this matchup when you know you're playing against Wrath of the Skies is just have a creature with the highest mana value. You just don't want to have a scenario where Eli is able to cast a Wrath, which is already great in Limited, but a Wrath that doesn't destroy one of his own creatures and then he gets to attack. You're just so much on the back foot that it ends up being really difficult to come back.
Whoa. The Undertaker is coming in here a little bit, huh? All right. Gonna mill over a swamp, it appears. So
6/5.
Corum is a 6/5, says Jacob. Do your worst, Eli.
So the one thing that you would kind of think these type of cards have on as text is that you could cast the spells with any kind of mana. Not true with this one, so you can take lands from your opponent and cast their spells, but you do need to have some islands here. Otherwise, I think Jacob would just be slamming that incredibly powerful enchantment.
It's a relief.
Yeah, I think Eli just figured out the same thing, that you do need mana to cast it, saying that's a relief.
So let's see where Jacob wants to go to next here in the second main phase. A lot of options. Looks like it's going to be 4 mana here from the Fanatic, given the ferocity of the Undertaker. And there is the Breaker.
Tapping 4 permanents to play an 8-drop? That feels pretty good.
Not too bad at all. Breaker, of course, when you cast it, you gain 1 life for each color's permanent you do control. Those color's permanents do include lands, folks, so at the very least, there'll be some life gain from those lands. Don't forget about the hexbrews from each color, and well, the Annihilator 2-part, I imagine we'll get to that momentarily as we head back Kassis's way.
Yeah, that's definitely the more impactful text on that card in this style of matchup. We saw Jacob just play against Brian Boss, who was trying to be very aggressive. Most important text on that was the life gain. So kind of flipping it on, flipping the script a little bit here.
Kassis with a Twisted Riddle Keeper, the aforementioned Consigned to Memory and Wrath of the Skies, a Copy Crook alongside an Emperor of Bones, and a Glasswing Grace. So you can see that Eli does have a pretty powerful deck, especially when the mana is online. Struggled to get there to start the game, but is making his way there now. We'll see if Electrozoa has any interest in attacking or not, as Kassis will take some time here to figure out the best way to navigate the turn, Corey.
Yep, now it comes down to an actual decision if you want to use the energy or not, because you don't necessarily have 10 mana laying around to Wrath of the Skies to get that Breaker off the battlefield. So you want to bank up a little bit of energy so you can play Wrath for maybe 5, X equals 5, and still be able to kill the powerful 8-drop if he so chooses.
Interesting turn here for Kassis, who is rather deep into the tank on this turn. This game is starting to get a little bit interesting because Jacob has finally presented some real threats, to say the least.
Yeah, it got a lot more interesting when players decided to cast cards.
Yeah,
you know, that,
crazy how that goes. It really is. And here comes Electrozoa. Is it flying solo is the question. Eli overseeing the battlefield, making sure nothing has reach over there. This is a set that does have a lot of reach in it.
A lot of hidden reach, yeah.
Yes, so it's a good thing to make sure. So you see the Eldrazi are big C, so they're able to attack flyers. But I guess the breaker is not big enough. Doesn't have the longest of arms out
Yeah.
there.
How many times did you attack into a petrifying metal before you got blown out?
That's a question I don't really think I need to answer.
Okay,
Corey.
fair enough. Sorry, I asked.
It's kind of a personal question.
Sore spot.
Yeah, thank you. So, Twisted Riddle Keeper is going to enter the battlefield there. When you cast it, you tap up to 2 target permanents, put a stun counter on each of them. So the 2 big ones there, and the Undertaker and the Breaker, they're going to be a little sleepy here for a little bit.
Yeah, such a phenomenal card. Really, really powerful. And once again, Eli is just trying to set up a position where he has the largest creature, so he really needs to get that breaker off the battlefield and then try to line up Wrath of the Skies for something like 6, being able to deal with everything but his gigantic Eldrazi, and then the game is pretty much won from there.
So we'll head back Jacob's way, who's had multiple copies of Galvanic Discharge in hand, but not too much to do with them over the course of the game. Foreboding Landscape was the draw for the turn to go alongside Wither and Bloom and Eviscerator's Insight. But Jacob doesn't have much to do, so is going to reluctantly pass the turn back over to Kassis, who will take a draw now. No energy in the bank, so goodbye, Electrozoa. It actually doesn't die. It's just going to be tapped eventually. Yeah, Eli was thinking it was goodbye. It's not. It's just it's nighty-night time for Electrozoa.
Yeah, nighty-night, and I guess both players are still waking up a little bit, making sure get the cobwebs off their play here. Yeah, and these Galvanic Discharges are still very strong in Jacob's deck, as you know, his deck is a little bit clunky, so dealing with early creatures is great, but doesn't have a lot of ways to create some extra energy to be able to have 1 mana deal with an Eldrazi type of an effect.
Well, Kassis has got 5 mana tapped. It's just a question of where to enchant the very powerful Aura. We saw this one yesterday be pretty good in the hands of Nicole Tipple, and Kassis is liking this card as well.
Well, it does look like Jacob has the ability to cast 3 removal spells to deal with that powerful 8 toughness creature here. Kind of worth it. You know, normally you don't want a 3-for-1 yourself, but with this enchantment on the stack, it is at least a 3-for-2. Otherwise, you just got to think Jacob's like, well, how else can I beat it? And here is kind of the head nod from him to like, you know, every Magic player doesn't want to get that much bad value going on here.
And this isn't the best situation with the Wither and Bloom, but Jacob's got to do what he's got to do to stop this Glasswing Grace from being very, very impactful. So Galvanic Discharge and Galvanic Discharge. So it took a lot. It took a lot to get it done. But it will get it done.
And I think Eli was kind of questioning the whole time. We're like, you have not been playing a lot of cards. What is in your hand with 5 cards available? He figured it out now.
Yeah. And if you're Kassis, you're, I think, pretty happy with that exchange.
Yeah, not bad, not bad. That was going to be a game-breaking combination if you can get that going. A 9-power life-linking flyer. Pretty good, you know. Double Baneslayer in one body here is going to be pretty tough to deal with. But same with, speaking with hard to deal with here, Emperor of the Bones is such an incredible rare in this set.
Yeah, Emperor of Bones is a very nice card. The Skeleton Noble has joined the battlefield here for Kassis, just a 2-mana 2/2, but at the beginning of combat, on your turn, you get to do some exiling, some adapting, and there's a lot to be done with that card. So that'll be a puzzle for Nagro to solve, and given that Nagro did just use a lot of resources to take care of a potentially large flyer, maybe out of gas to take care of the Emperor.
Yeah, probably out of cheap removal spells, as Jacob just cast all of them in his deck here. And it is really telling to me how powerful a card is when you look at a player's mana base. Eli Kassis is playing 4 black sources. Normally, if you're playing that little of sources for a card, you're splashing for maybe a 5-drop, 6-drop. No, splashing for a 2-drop. You don't plan on playing this one right away on turn 2. You play it in the late game, and it's still very impactful.
Well, speaking of the late game, we are here And Kozilek, the broken reality, is about to appear. So the big fella is on the stack. And when you cast this spell, up to 2 target players each manifest 2 cards from their hands. For each card manifested this way, you draw a card. Now, don't forget, other colorless creatures you control get +3/+2, which is no joke as well. Kassis has got a lot to think about now.
Yeah, so he's got Consign. It's going to go onto the stack, but it is definitely a choice if you want to counter the ability or you just want to counter the 9/9 body. You know, more than likely the 9/9 body here is what you want to deal with, since you have Wrath of the Skies to deal with the creatures it's going to manifest, but it is still a decision here.
So there's the Consign, and it actually looks like the Consign is going to counter the triggered ability as opposed to the Kozilek itself. So if you are Jacob, you might be wondering, okay, well, what's the deal with that? Well, that might be pretty clear that if you're willing to allow Kozilek to appear, it's not going to be there for long.
Yeah, probably not. And I think Jacob was also thinking, well, he was looking over the pools because they don't get their full deck list. It is open pool here in the featured pod. Just thinking, okay, please have those consigned to memories be sideboard.
Yeah, not so much. Not so much. So there is an Annihilator trigger on the stack right now from the Breaker. It is Annihilator 2, and it looks like Electrozoa may be part of that too, and Eli's just deciding what the other card will be that heads to the graveyard.
And now with Annihilator being on the stack here, Eli's kind of in the abyss where Wrath of the Skies is no longer going to really have a chance to deal with any of these giant Eldrazi's. So he's going to have to figure out a way to deal with these powerful creatures, and doesn't have the best way possible to deal with Kozilek after this Breaker is gone, after this block.
Yeah, so you see Eli's just going to do some jump blocking. Both of these creatures on his side of the battlefield are going to die. Jacob's got all of his left. Looks like maybe play a land here, and let's see if Jacob's got a follow-up. Looks like he may have a question here real quick.
Sorry, I milled Null Drifter from his library this turn. Am I allowed to evoke it with this ability?
Interesting.
I have blue, to be clear.
So the question here is, Jacob milled Null Drifter with the Undertaker, and he's wondering if he's able to evoke the Null Drifter via the Undertaker because he does have access to blue mana. So our judge in the future match area is going to answer that question for him right now.
And I would think the answer is yes. It's an alternate cast, so I think you should be able to cast it from the graveyard, but not 100% sure. I bet this hasn't come up a lot here in MH3 draft at the Pro Tour.
Yeah, this isn't an interaction that you do see every day, so it is worth knowing. Now, I suppose for what it's worth, you know, Jacob, you're pretty far ahead as it is there, pal, so I don't know if you really need this one, but can't hurt, get a couple extras.
Yeah, I think Eli's like, you know, maybe don't worry about the ruling. I'm going to draw my card and concede, but...
Maybe the case, but, you know, it's a good time to learn here. So
yeah.
This is a fun interaction, of which there are many in Modern Horizons 3 Limited because of all these keywords and kind of some crazy legendary creatures that are running around in this set. You do see some things that you may not see traditionally, Corey, in Limited.
Definitely. A lot of mechanics that were kind of designed to play well with certain other mechanics, not design mechanics that were meant to be played well with the last 20 years of mechanics or so.
But it is what's making this format so very
fun.
Cool. I very much enjoy this format thus far, and I think it's only going to get better over time as the Modern Horizons formats, especially for Limited, tend to be quite good. So while these players patiently wait on our judges' ruling, we can learn a little bit more about them. Jake Nagro is our undefeated player here in day number 2, 9-0 from Albuquerque in the United States, qualified for this tournament via the Second Chance PTQ at Pro Tour Outlaws at Thunder Junction. They have that Sunday at PTQ for people who played in the Pro Tour. For them, they get the, I guess I'd say, a second opportunity to qualify, and he did exactly that.
Talk about like the hardest PTQ you could ever play, and it's only people that were Pro Tour players that weekend.
That's right. So a very impressive accomplishment there for Jacob. I don't know if it's more impressive than actually getting the opportunity to evoke a Null Drifter, but it depends on who you ask, and Eli is going to concede the game. So Mr. 9-0 is one step closer to being Mr. 10-0, and that is Jacob Nagro here, wins game number 1 over Eli Kassis, Corey.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've seen Jacob around the Pro Tour for years, was playing when I was playing back in the day, and just a really, really smart guy, and always seems to be at the top of the table. Always kind of plays the deck. you know, but just plays it so well and is so masterful with his plays and ends up really yielding him some great results.
Kassis is going to start things off here with an island. And for Eli, going to get on the battlefield a little bit quicker this time around with a little bit of energy as well. So not a bad start here for him. Jacob going to use one of those landscapes to search up a mountain. The 2-drop in question is the, I like to call it the merfolk looter of the set. You got to work a little bit for it in Tempest Harvester because you do need energy to do it. But it's, if you have a good energy deck, it's pretty easy to do.
Very good. And even if you can only get 2 loots from it and then you can just block as a 2/1, perfectly fine to have in a non-energy deck. Happy to have that one. But yeah, gotta love the play things before turn 5 strategy. We'll see how that one works out compared to game 1.
It's a crazy idea. An Idol of False Gods means that Jacob is on the battlefield on turn number 2 as well. So Eli's going to spend an energy to draw a card and discard a card.
Yeah, I've really never seen a card that kind of had so much controversy behind it is Idol of the False Gods. So many players are like, no, that card is amazing. And other people are like, that card is completely unplayable. You know, I definitely think it's somewhere in the middle as that card can really get out of hand, especially if you ever get to read that last line of text on the card when it becomes a 8-power creature with Annihilator.
Yeah, not so bad, I would say. Not so bad. Sneaky Snacker is in the graveyard now from the looting, so Eli getting a little bit of value there. We'll see if he ever finds a way to bring it back. In the meantime, Nagro's just going to play a land and pass the turn back. So over to Eli we do go. You do see the Sneaky Snacker there, the 2-mana 2/1. When you draw your 3rd card in a turn, return Sneaky Snacker from your battlefield to the battlefield tap, excuse me, from your graveyard to the battlefield tap. So drawing a 2nd card, not all that tough when you have a looter going. The 3rd one, maybe a little bit tough, but this set is designed in mind to be able to bring back the Snacker, Corey.
Definitely, and you feel so good whenever you can discard that card to any kind of looting effect or just really any way that benefits you. And then we do also see the Unfathomable Truce in hand for Eli to be able to bring that back next turn with a land all wrapped up. So a beautiful value play of a card that reads 5 mana, draw 3 cards, put a Scion into play. Already pretty good. But if you get to add, put a 2/1 flyer into play, that's real good.
That's real good indeed. Witch Enchanter taking care of the idol. So some good exchanges here from Kassis so far. Polluted Delta the draw step here for Eli. And does have Wrath of the Skies once again. You can see Jacob's hand with a Quest for the Necropolis, a Galvanic Discharge, a Scurrilous Sentry, and a Titan's Vanguard. So both players firing on all cylinders here this game.
Yeah, absolutely. This looks like it's going to work out pretty well for Eli here, as Eli is going to be able to go Unfathomable Truce, get all that value. Well, Jacob, did have a land available, has green mana, so can play something like Titan's Vanguard, and Eli's going to have a beautiful turn of being able to Wrath of the Skies next turn after drawing a bunch of cards.
Well, it looks like it's going to be a Scurrilous Sentry here in the meantime for Nagro. So once this 4-mana 2/3 enters the battlefield, you get the opportunity to connive, and some conniving will be done. So it'll be a 3/4 menace right now, perhaps more in the future. But before we get there, Kassis is going to sacrifice Polluted Delta, get a swamp, and it might be time for a little draw 3, make a Scion, and a 2/1 from the graveyard.
And Jacob had a nice little play there of being able to discard Eldrazi Ravager. Has 2 Eldrazi in play, so it's a little way to insulate yourself from a Wrath of the Skies. At least you get a little value back if you're about to lose your creatures anyways.
Yes, indeed. So, 3 cards here. Sneaky Snacker has appeared on the battlefield as well. And we are heading back Kassis' way.
Yeah, Eli's hand is just beautiful now. True the Shadow of the Second Sun as well. Hard to imagine not wanting to get that one down as fast as possible, as Eli does have the ability to slam that right now, untap, and then have some plays to make during Jacob's turn. A little Wilderness Reclamation style of effect happening here for everyone. Who misses that card? I'm sure there are 10s of 20s of people out there.
Yes, there are dozens of them.
Dozens of them.
Shadow of the Second Sun is an interesting one. It takes a little bit of a moment to kind of reconfigure your brain on there being an additional beginning phase after this phase. So basically what that means is you get to do your untap, your upkeep, and then your draw step, and then your turn is over. So once this thing is on the battlefield, you're effectively, as you said, Wilderness Reclamation. You're also drawing an additional card, too. So, you're doing some nice work with that card. It is an expensive one, but once it starts going, you get that thing on the battlefield for a turn or 3. It's pretty darn good, Corey.
Absolutely, yeah. If you can get that in play when you're not under an immense amount of pressure, which we don't really see a ton here, at 15 or more life, you got to feel like your percentage to win the game kind of skyrockets, especially when you have a card like Wrath in the Skies in the deck, where if at any point Jacob does get a little carried away with the battlefield, you're able to neutralize that and then draw 2 cards a turn, and things get a little carried away from that point.
Well, there's the Connive, discarding a Fanatic of Ronus, so it's now a 4 or 5 minutes that's entering the battle, excuse me, attacking on the battlefield. And now Eli going to communicate here with Jacob a little bit, seeing if he can go to blocks or not. So let's see what Kassis wants to do.
Yeah.
Looks like a potentially risky triple block here, Corey.
Yeah, a little bit there. There was another opportunity to just put like the 2 flyers in front of the Sentry, but that becomes a little bit more risky. Here, I guess you have to still kill 2 creatures to be able to make this a very profitable block, but I think this is more of Eli saying, I dare you, because I want you to deal with these creatures. They're not that big or impactful right now, especially with being able to draw 2 cards a turn. That Sneaky Snacker is going to have a pretty easy way of coming back if you can just draw 1 extra card during your turn.
Discharge the Zoa.
So there's the Galvanic Discharge on the Electrozoa. And now a little bit of reinforcing to be done as well. So this is causing Jacob to really kind of use all of his resources to win this combat, which did work out. And some damage, of course, getting through. Jacob going to follow up there with another landscape and pass the turn back. Now, is that the kind of exchange that Kassis is happy with? I have to imagine he's not unhappy with it, because of course he does have the Wrath of the Skies in hand.
Yeah,
right?
I think it's probably Wrath time here, especially where Eli only has to pay 3 mana here, so can Wrath and then have a follow-up. Pretty tempting here, but of course you want to maximize the amount of value that you get with it, but it kind of feels like it's time here. But Eli Kassis is definitely one of the most patient gamers I've seen, and you know, definitely paid dividends throughout his career.
It has indeed, and patient is a great way to describe the way that Eli approaches a game. He's never in too much of a rush with any of his decision making, and he has waited long enough on this card. So here's the Wrath of the Skies, going to get a bunch of energy, and now use it to take care of all the things.
Yep, and Eli, most importantly, did that for 3. He didn't have to. He only had to tap 3 mana, but realizes he wants to play that Emperor of the Bones with that remaining 2 mana after the Wrath resolves, and then untap, have the ability to adapt it or do any other kind of tricks that he has in hand.
So 4 energy will be used. Wrath of the Skies is going to finish everything off. Jacob going to return an Eldrazi from the graveyard, of course, because there were 2 to sacrifice. So Eli has shored up the battlefield now, has stabilized this game at a very healthy 12 life, I would say. You mentioned Emperor of the Bones, and there that is. And now, might be time here for a little beginning phase in just a moment. I'm getting slightly ahead of myself. Eli certainly is not, as the beginning of combat, the Emperor of Bones does trigger, and now there is the untap, the draw, and the passing of the turn. Very, very good turn there for Kassis.
Definitely, and getting rid of the creature that has a nice ability in the graveyard before Jacob's able to do anything with it. Beautiful, beautiful turn for Eli. He's got to be happy with that. Now, Jacob does have one of the best cards in the set. Titan's Vanguard is so incredibly powerful, but it's much, much better when you have some other things to do with it. You know, especially its absolute best buds with Writhing Chrysalis. None of those were really saw. We didn't really see any of those in the draft here when we were birding Jacob's perspective. I'm sure he wishes he saw a couple of them, though.
Yeah, I imagine.
So good in Jacob's deck and just in any deck.
Jacob going to start to rebuild a little bit, or at least try here, with a quest for the Necropolis. So this single black enchantment is on the battlefield. It has landfall, of course. Whenever a land enters the battlefield under your control, you put a quest counter on the quest for the Necropolis, And you can pay 6 mana and sacrifice that their quest to put target creature card from a graveyard onto the battlefield under your control. Of course, this ability costs 1 less to activate for each quest counter on the quest itself. Not one, a little bit more of a long-term play, perhaps. But he does have the Titan's Vanguard on the battlefield now, as you mentioned, Corey.
Yeah.
And Jacob is more or less all in here.
Yeah, absolutely. Quest is definitely a solid card. You don't get any of the cast triggers from your really powerful Eldrazi's that you bring back, but still getting some value to bring back the biggest creature from either graveyard. Definitely very impactful. And we see Titan's Vanguard come down. It does stay as just a 5/5 with the cast trigger because it doesn't, of course, see itself. But when you attack, then it does attack as a 6/6.
We're going to head back Kassis' way now. Of course, that activation of Adapt was on Nagro's end step, and now the Fnatic is on the battlefield with a finality counter on it. We told you, they thought of everything in Modern Horizons.
They really did. And it's super online with the fact that it adds 4 mana right now, so a nice little combination here. I bet we're going to be seeing some twisted riddle keeping. Even with an emerge, it's kind of free.
Sacrifice.
Beautiful.
There is the Riddle Keeper.
Reduces it by 2. So
And this is going to be some emerging here, so Kassis communicating well as always. Just a single mana floating now after this. And some stunning here on the way, perhaps.
Yeah, and this one feels pretty over. We have the Consign to Memory to deal with Jacob Nagro's only card in hand. 1 mana to deal with that. Feels really, really bad. Well, Eli's still drawing 2 cards, still has a bunch of gas in hand. The Knot Master's incredible. You can even copy any creature in play, which Eli just played a nice one to copy. Dealer's choice on which one you want to do. Both are incredible.
copy brick.
or Jacob's, why not?
And there is the Copy Crook.
As a cast trigger.
Oh, okay, gotcha. And then it's when it attacks.
Yeah.
Yep, so Jacob and Eli communicating well. Jacob saying that's a cast trigger, so you don't get the counters on your stuff. But when you do attack with the Copy Crook, that is a copy of the Titan's Vanguard, then your creatures, of course, will get those +1/+1 counters. So it's not yet, Eli.
Yeah. You know, you can even see how complicated some of these rules get. Eli's been playing the game since 1996, you know, has lived through all the iterations. And yeah, you still miss some of these things as the set is incredibly complicated, which just makes it so fun to see at the highest level.
Yeah, one thing about cards that have these abilities when you cast them, you're used to them being enters the battlefield triggers as opposed to cast triggers. But when we're in the land of Eldrazi, a lot of these things are cast triggers, especially so here in Modern Horizons 3. So the quest is going to bite the dust, thanks to the Witch Enchanter. That is going to take care of that. And Eli's battlefield is looking great. So now Eli's going to trigger and go back to the next beginning phase here. It looks like in just a moment. Finality counter on the Witch Enchanter, of course. So Jacob helping out a little bit. There's the untap. We're going back to the beginning phase. That's gone here. Let's draw a card there for Eli Kassis and pass the turn back. Nagro might be last draw step of this particular game for him.
Yeah, that was a beautiful little play from Eli, being able to put a counter on the Emperor of Bones to be able to bring something back after it's already adapted. That's kind of the beautiful tricks we see from the modified deck, but Eli using those tricks in his Esper deck as well.
That is going to do it here for game number 2. Eli Kassis is going to tie things up here against Jacob Nagro. Round number 10 headed to game number 3. And let's see what these players can put together here. A very important game here in this round. Nagro wins, continues to be the lone undefeated player at 10-0. Kassis wins this one, moves up to 9-1, and might be first place in the standings or pretty darn close to it. So a very, very high leverage game in front of us here in Amsterdam.
Yeah, absolutely. And, you know, no matter what, either of these players having 1 loss or 2 losses if Eli does lose this match, perfectly fine. You feel great going into the last couple rounds of the tournament, but you never really want to get that mindset going. Be like, it's okay, I lost this one, because then all of a sudden you look back and you're like, okay, maybe it's not okay, I lost the 5th one here of the day or something like that.
Jund online, but nothing to do with all 3 colors of mana, so we head back over to Kassis. See what Eli's up to over here. You see an island was the draw step for the turn to go along with another copy of an island in hand. So Eli will play one of those blue producing lands and pass the turn back over to Nagro. Nagro going to play a forest and now finally get something on the battlefield here. So better late than never here for Jacob. We saw these players operating early in game number 2. This looks, Corey, a lot like game number 1.
Yeah, absolutely. Jacob, finding a play for this turn was excellent because otherwise his hand is not great. 2 small removal spells, only dealing with little creatures as well as the gigantic Kozilek, which are very, very far away from. But this ended up being actually kind of the best play for Jacob to top deck as Eli was all ready to go with Aether Spike. Still had the mana left over to be able to pay for the Dryad there.
Yeah, Tempest Harvester going to bite the dust. So that one gets killed. Wither and Bloom is going to make Nightshade Dryad a little bit larger and send that one into the red zone. So a decent little exchange there for Jacob Nagro. But as you mentioned, Jacob's hand not really kind of the best things going on here. A very expensive Kozilek, a Grave Dig without much to do, a Galvanic Discharge without much to target, and Eldrazi Ravager, which feels like it's a little ways away here.
Yep, absolutely. The big draw step here for Eli next turn is going to be if he can find a land. He can get that incredible enchantment going again and then leave up counter magic. But if not, isn't really doing the most. Still has Unfathomable Truce if there's nothing going on. But Eli can go Shadow of the Second Sun and Unfathomable Truce. The ultimate value machine if he does top deck a land here.
Well, the Eldrazi
Big draw
Ravager,
step.
that was cycled. So we head over to Eli, and that land is there. And now here it is once again. It's time for some more beginning phases as Shadow of the Second Sun has arrived.
If we had an advantage bar, Cedric, I would say it just smashed in favor of Eli Kassis here, as that is such a great exchange. Once again, he played it when he was at 16 life last game. It really took over. Did it again when there's not a lot of pressure on him. It's looking really, really great. He even has the consign to memory for Kozilek. That is really the main play that could get Jacob back into this. So this is definitely Eli Kassis' game to lose, to not be more than likely the tournament leader after this round.
It'll be a grave deck here from Nagro, who is struggling along here this game. Kassis is going to say, well, give me just 1 second. I'm going to play an Unfathomable Truths first. So 3 cards coming. Not a bad little exchange there. Don't forget about that little 0-1 too.
He has the ability to Aether Spike this and use all his energy to counter it after he drew 3 cards. Just the most beautiful play you can have here.
So there's that. A little bit of energy, and Gravedigg has been countered. There's the attack for 3. Kassis is going to fall down to 13. Excuse me, it's actually just an attack here for 2. So Kassis is going to fall down to 14. Nevertheless, it could be 13. It could be 2. I think Eli's doing pretty good right now.
You're right, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, what's the life total he could be at to still win this game here? I think that'd be a good thought exercise here because he has, 7 cards in hand? He kind of would think about, I guess he does have 7 cards now and he's going to draw 1 extra card at end step. He might be plenty happy just drawing and then going to discard Sneaky Snacker if he has to discard the hand
That's
size.
entirely possible. That is entirely possible here for Kassis, who's going to give the hand a long look. One thing I love about watching the best players play is when they are pretty far ahead, which I would say Kassis is in this game, given the number of cards in hand and what he has on the battlefield there. It's a game where you slow down and you make sure you figure out the best ways not to win the game, but don't try to find a way to lose the game.
Oh yeah, absolutely. You see it so many times when a player is just like, all right, I got this one, I'll just kind of play a little bit loose, and then all of a sudden you look back and you're just like, oh wait, how did I lose this game? And that's kind of one of the worst feelings in Magic, is kind of punting away a game that seems like a sure thing.
So that might seem like an unorthodox use of Wrath of the Skies here, given what we saw it do in the last game and for Jeskai control in the modern portion of this event. But Eli's just doing what he can to make sure that he does not lose this game. Don't take any major risks right now. use your life total as a resource up into a point, and now he's going to start perhaps getting a little bit more aggressive as the Electrozoas, plural, are going to join the battlefield. One of them's going to bite the dust, and actually they both will, as Jacob had a couple of removal spells there in reserve, but Eli's going to continue to untap and accrue some small advantages thanks to the shadow of the second sun.
Yep, I just think that Wrath was just basically, I'm going to start playing creatures from here on out, so this card's going to rot in my hand unless I get a little bit of value from it now. And choking Jacob on mana right now is really all he wants to be doing.
Emperor of Bones is going to join the battlefield in the first main phase. Eli wants to get a good look at the graveyard as the Emperor at the beginning of combat on your turn has the option to exile up to one target card from a graveyard, of course. We could see some adapting here soon enough as well. So Eli getting some information and then referencing his hand as well, Corey.
Yep, looks like we're getting the Eldrazi Ravager into exile. When Jacob's really stumbling on permanents here, kind of low resources, being able to next turn attack and have Annihilator 1 could be the difference of you being able to play your Kozilek on time. We know it's not going to matter anyways because of the consign, but that could be a huge factor. But yeah, Jacob's just really had nothing going on this game. It's, hasn't been remotely close.
Jacob is just going to simply pass the turn back here over to Eli. So Eli will do that adapting that I mentioned a little bit earlier. And there's a big old Eldrazi over there now. So we're going to head back over Kassis' way.
Yeah, gotta love the end step trick with that because it does go away at end step. Similar to what we see with Dress Down being used a lot here in the modern portion. Play that at someone's end step, has the ability to be used during the next turn.
Just attack with this Annihilator.
And there will be an Annihilator 1 trigger right now. Here from Eli.
6.
14 all.
And Jacob says 14 all, question mark, and it is indeed. And now that Eldrazi Ravager is exiled for good.
Eli picked up a second consign for a little insult to injury here.
Yeah, to say the least. Eli is just so far ahead in this game. And all Jacob can do is just draw force and pass the turn back with that Kozilek in reserve that we all know, both here in the booth, you at home, and I think actually everybody in Amsterdam knows too. That thing's not going to do much of anything. So Eli's going to tap a whole bunch of mana now, which is never a good feeling if you're on the opposing side of it, especially in this format.
Yeah, I think it just got printed in the Amsterdam News that there's no way that this Kozilek is resolving.
That is
such
correct.
a big story right now.
It's bad news all around here for Jacob, who's had a wonderful start to this tournament, but winning every single round is a pretty big ask. Picking up a first loss seems inevitable in events like this, but if your first loss is in round number 10 against Eli Kassis, you're having one heck of an event.
Yeah, I'll never complain losing to the dad of the Pro Tour, as you were stating earlier.
That's right. So Eli's going to get a little bit busy here with the Emperor, the sneaky snacker.
Sorry, it's 10. I didn't get the counter yet. So you're at 4.
And a pretty healthy attack is going to bring Nagro down to 4.
Trigger.
The shadow will trigger. Eli will untap all the things, which effectively gives us vigilance as well. That Shadow of the Second Sun is very powerful, folks, if you can get it on a pretty even battlefield. And this game is anything but even. It is over. Eli Kassis going to win this game and match over Jacob Nagro. 2-1. The dad of the PT is moving on with another W and one step closer to another top finish, Corey.
Yep, absolutely. Another impressive finish here being delivered by Eli Kassis. It kind of seems like every time we do one of these Pro Tours, he's always in that first page of standings, or second at the very least.
At the very least, indeed. Congratulations to Eli Kassis on a very impressive win. Going to be near the very tippy top of the standings. Condolences over to Jacob Nagro, but both players having a wonderful tournament, just like Corey and I are here in the booth, and Maria and friends in the news desk.